प्रसार भारती अभिलेखागार की प्रस्तुति सदाबहार सुनहरे दौर का अनमोल खजाना।
Ebrahim Hamad Al-Ali Al-Abdullah Al-Abdurrahman Alkazi. How can an explosion kill 500 persons? An explosion in Ceylon, in Jaffna, is supposed to have killed 500 Tamil civilians. One explosion killing 500 persons. It's quite ridiculous in today's papers. My father would come to Pune from Bombay by train, by the Deccan Queen, and he would invariably arrive on a Friday evening, and which reached, I think, at about 8 o'clock at night. And there we would be on the veranda, looking out across the synagogue, along the wall, watching the lights of every single tonga as it passed by, and wondering whether it would then turn into Synagogue Street, and whether that indeed would be the tonga that would bring my father into our home. And then, of course, there would be a tremendous amount of disappointment as tonga after tonga after tonga would then just go past. And then there would be that tonga, the clip-clop of the hoofs of which would slow down, and the tonga would turn into this drive, and then there would be this gravelly sound as it came along to you, and there would be this excitement, etc., as your father came out. But also, with me, a tremendous sense of fear, because I was in great awe of my father. And I was terrified, really, about all the complaints of the week that my mother would make to him regarding us. However, she was very kind, very sporting, and he himself was by no means a tyrant, though it was his mere presence and that overawed us. सुनिए, हमेशा एक्स्ट्रा बल्ब लगाइए, वो जो फ्यूज हुए हैं उनको रिप्लेस कीजिए उनको, वो जो फ्यूज हो गए. Then somebody has to go to the bank and make the demand draft, to be sent to him. So let's do that in the next 2 or 3 days. Okay, anything else? Yes. Now you can go to the thing there. Because the truck will come there between 12:30 and 1:30, and I'll try and be there. If I'm not there, you know what to do. Be careful about my camera, please. I think you can go. Okay? Yeah, I think you can go now. Thanks a lot. Thank you. The Baba of Seville, the music of the Baba of Seville still haunts me, as do the waltzes of Strauss and so on. I was amazed by the sort of eclectic kind of taste which my father had. He was also one of the earliest persons in Pune to buy himself a Marconi radio. And what amazed me was that on a Sunday I would listen to the hysterical speeches of Hitler on the radio. It never occurred to me really that it was Hitler. But then later on, when I thought back upon it, there was this voice rising to a high-pitched crescendo. There were these enormous masses of people clapping and applauding and so on and so forth. And there was all that kind of sort of military fervor and discipline and so on and so forth, which came across continents. And that I then began to link with some of the Jesuit fathers who happened to be Germans, who were taken away in Black Marias to their camps in Ahmednagar. So as we sat in the class on the first floor of St. Vincent's High School, which was then a brick building, we watched the Black Marias come into the compound trailing dust, and we watched these figures in their cassocks and so on get quietly into the Black Marias and go off. And it was very quietly sort of broken to us that some of the members of the staff had been taken away. Because I think that yesterday I was trying to time it with the pauses and with the interruptions and with our going back and forth and so on and so forth. Sarvan is coming. From the rafters, etc., you can get the shadows falling on the faces of people. We can have lights on top. I want to have, you see that kind of bali that you have over there. I want to have that kind of thing, you know, a little, you see the thickness of that pipe there. Will we be able to take the platforms upstairs? No, I'm asking you. I don't want a limp rehearsal. I invariably go back to my childhood. And I don't think that is because I've almost come into a second childhood now myself, but because I think that that was the richest. All one's sensory sort of recollections are associated with childhood, whether it's a sense of smell or sight or touch or whatever. And I think that I have always been an extremely physical and an extremely sense-sensitive individual. So many things are recollected purely in terms of smell, in terms of the kind of smell of the kitchen that you had, or the kind of the smell that floated around my mother, or the kind of other smells that pervaded the home, say of an evening when the Loban would be taken all over the house, you know, just as the lights came on, and the whole house was sort of redolent with this exquisite kind of what shall we say, aroma, which is almost a heady aroma, which then floated off into the air.
Bombay High Court में केस ट्रीट करने जा रहा है.
I don't really think that I know up to this moment really who I am. I only know that I'm an extremely, what shall we say, convoluted and extremely complex individual who may have on the one hand a tremendous amount of generosity on the one hand, but on the other hand a tremendous amount of seething anger and a seething sense of disillusionment.
During some of the characters, he tells me that don't be afraid to reach your depth. Come out with it. You don't have to put up a show in front of people or whatever. Be whatever you are.
Step back, step back, step back. Look her up and down. Move, establish this woman whom you've driven to death. Come down a couple of steps, that step. Establish connection with that woman there. And then establish connection with that house. For me, second childhood means living life all over again. All the past is sort of recharge, reinvigorates you. I feel that every single day. I feel a tremendous sense of youth. I'm now 70 years old, but I don't feel that age. Incidentally, in college itself, I came across Sultan Padamsi, who had initiated the Shakespeare Society at St. Xavier's College. And Sultan Padamsi, who happened incidentally to be the brother of my wife, Roshan Alkazi, Roshan Padamsi, had just come back from Oxford because of the war, and he had got enrolled in St. Xavier's College, and he was a person of such extraordinary intellectual stature that his genius is immediately recognized. Not merely by the quality of his poetry, say for example, or the quality of his productions, and his productions were indeed of an extraordinarily high standard. He did, in the course of the work with the Shakespeare Society, he did Twelfth Night, but more than that, it was really Macbeth and Othello, both of which I was associated with in a minor capacity as an actor, that I found one of the most exciting, two of the most exciting things that I had been involved in. He was a kind of an Orson Welles of the Indian theatre movement. And I think that his genius remains unrecognized till today. And very flamboyant. There's kind of a, what shall we say, extravagant, flamboyant quality to his personality, which immediately won you over. Unfortunately, he committed suicide at a very early age. within a serious camp. So they've got good programs, cultural programs, educational programs, so they're showing the church. And they've asked me to make another 26. There was an occasion in Pune, which was then of course called Pune, where an Iranian family which lived in that compound packed up and left. And they left in a series of Victorias, the carriages and so on, which took them and their belongings and so on the way to the railway station, en route, I suppose, to Iran. And the kind of loneliness and anguish that hung all over the place is something absolutely extraordinary. I remember going around to their home and moving around it, sniffing around it almost like a dog, and trying to inhale the presence of their warmth and of their affection and their kindness and their liveliness, which had been so rich and which had played such an important part in my life, and of which now I felt bereft. I felt then that there had been more than one death in my family. This was in the 40s. This was in 42, 43, 44. I was in just off Muhammad Ali Road in a building called the Gobhai Karanja building. And the incidents would take place immediately under you in the street. And you would see these two mobs advancing towards each other from the Hindu side in front of you and from the Muslim side behind you with soda water bottles and with staves and sticks and knives and stones and so on and so forth. But some of the appalling things that I saw going along the edge of the street was a Victoria, a man driving a Victoria, a carriage, being dragged down and being stabbed several times, and that was one of the most appalling scenes that I witnessed. The other thing was that there were the tramways going in Bombay in those days, and there was a tramway which went immediately under the building, and the manner in which the passengers in the tram were attacked by the mobs, along with the screams and yells and shouts and so on and so forth, was something absolutely horrifying, so that they became nightmarish. From time to time you would see fires burning into different parts of the city, and from time to time you would see mobs coming out with blood-stained clothes. And certainly that kind of thing was a very shattering experience. I think every young man goes through a stage of agnosticism. Every young man goes through a stage where he questions the belief that the faith that he has been brought up in. And it was not that I questioned the Islamic religion and fell for Catholicism or any other, but one begins to doubt the very sort of basis of all religious faith. And then one is drawn to other kind of idealistic movements in history. You see, one is drawn to the French Revolution, say, for example. One is drawn to, later on, to the Russian Revolution and to the great changes and transformations that took place in society. And certainly one was tremendously impressed by the great strides that, in the field of literature and the arts and so on and so forth, which at a particular point in the early 20th century took place in Russia. We have that very passionate scene. Come on, embrace her. Come here. He embraces her. Yes. Step back, because he's too heavy for you. Step back. No, don't break. I'm serious about this. It's very difficult in a close embrace to maintain your balance. Step back. Step back. Step back. नहीं, वो आपके साथ होगा. जी हाँ, पीछे हटिए. आइए. Then collapse. You melt with passion. Collapse on your knees. This needs, Shabash, what a fantastic love scene. Yes, come on, come on. Yes, come on, chaliye, aaiye. Aaiye, come on. Okay. Now, embrace her.
I'm sure he would have been very mischievous, very naughty, but also very, very hardworking, because I'm sure, he was always very, very disciplined.
It was absolutely terrible because, say for example, in a class of history, if you do not know your dates and if you do not know the period, the reigns of various emperors and rulers and so on and so forth, we had to put out our hands. And she had the thin end of the ruler, and we used to be hit like that on the knuckles. And it was about 4 cuts or 6 cuts or 8 cuts on both hands. Well, the rounded rulers, the long rounded rulers, the black, vicious, round, they were almost like a policeman's baton. And he would, he would strike us on the palm of our hands, on the fingers with the palms open. And so invariably one went home day after day bruised in this kind of brutal manner. Some of the Jesuit fathers were equally cruel. So much so that I took to playing truant. I would run away from school. And for several days at a time, when this kind of spell of tyranny was inflicted on us, I'd get on my bicycle and go to the botanical gardens. And I'd sit over there and I'd read novels and so on. And when I'd had come back about 3 or 4 days later, I would forge letters and forge my mother couldn't write, forge my sister's signature, etc., and saying that my son had been ill, etc., for so many days, please to excuse him, and the rest of it, and go back again to class. Well, I was invited by the principal, who had been the chap who had been so cruel to me in my childhood, to address the students. And when I went to this institution, he said that the students had been turned out onto this playing field, and I was brought out onto a raised balcony, and there was a microphone there, and there was a staff lined up in a semicircle behind me. Some of them were the people who had taught me when I was a youngster. And I was asked to address these students. I did not know what to say. It was the day of their examinations. I just didn't know what to say. And so on the spur of the moment I said, well, I remember this place extremely well because this was the place where I used to play truant. And those were amongst the happiest days that I spent in school. And I refer them to the botanical gardens and the kind of plants and so on that existed over there. They could learn a great deal about nature, through this kind of direct contact. As far as the examination, I said, I believe that you have examinations today. Now, the important thing in examinations is that you can copy, but you should copy without getting caught. And I said, I have, I think, one of the records in St. Vincent's High School, and that is, I was one of the chaps who failed for 2 years in succession, despite the fact that I tried to copy. And I said, there are various techniques of copying. You write things down on your thigh. We used to wear short pants and so on. You write the theorems and so on down on your thigh, etc., your algebraic equations and the rest of it. Then you turn up your thing a little bit up there and so on. You turn it down again as the chap comes towards you and so on. And of course there was a horrified silence. And I said, there's a new international which has been devised, and based on that of the workers of the world, etc. It says, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. But I said there's a new variation which is, duffers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your brains. We created a world of fantasy which was quite extraordinary, which was really aroused by the surroundings we were in. From the trees around, from the neem trees, say for example, that we had, or the custard apple trees, or the chiku trees and so on that we had. Though we were a large family, it was largely with my sisters that I played. And for many years, childhood years, we lived collectively together in that fantasy, so that when we talk back upon it, and they hear me recall some of these things, it really becomes extraordinary how rich the whole thing was. The other thing, extraordinary thing that my father did was to have a room which turned out to be a library. And he bought the Encyclopedia of Knowledge, which was edited by Arthur Mee, and it was in 20 volumes, and it was an extraordinary encyclopedia. And that was the thing that I and my brothers and sisters dipped into, because that was what initiated me into art and into my understanding and appreciation of Western art. There was a moment in my life when I ran away from home. I'm not very sure really whether it was just a sort of a youthful escapade or whether there's something more deep and traumatic in my own experience of life and what I wanted to do with it. I think to a certain extent it was a matter of soul searching, because I was interested in the artistic life, and I felt that in the kind of mercantile world of Bombay to which my father belonged, that was not quite the place for me. And I found it rather difficult to make an adjustment between pursuing a kind of a career in business, as my father wanted me to do, and to discover myself as a creative person. My father was from Saudi Arabia. I believe that he left Saudi Arabia as an orphan at a very early age, something like 12 or 13. And he walked across Saudi Arabia, I imagine in the company of Bedouins and so on, and came to Basra. And he found his way to Bombay. And because his handwriting was extremely good, and I imagine because he was an honest, a conscientious person, he found a job as a clerk in one of the amongst one of the families in Bombay, and worked his way up, and he became an established merchant in Bombay. We cannot have this. Put your hand on this. Put your hand on this. You see all this. How can I can't frame these things, put them up, and put them up in an exhibition, because we must have the highest standard. These standards, it is not good enough. Or dekhiye ye bhi pura line hai wagara. No, look, I will only use this roughly for the time being as.
Shisha lagana hai. That's what he told me.
Yes, I know, but still, even then, even when we are using it now, it is going to lie here for 2 months. Look at all that. How can you do this? In Bombay, when I was a student at St. Xavier's College at the age of about 16, between 16 and 17, I would go down the building where I lived, the Gobhai Karanja building, and into what was known as a Kolsa Mahalla. I always made my way to St. Xavier's College on foot, because I went through the lanes and the back lanes of Bombay because I wanted to imbibe that extraordinary culture. There was also the new and second-hand bookshop there, where on my way back from college, I would always stop and I would always buy some books. And this practice has gone on, as a matter of fact, for the last 50 years. I still do that, and the people over there still remember me. One of the things that stands out vividly in my mind is when I was acting on the stage, and I had just given a performance as an old man with a beard and so on and so forth, and I thought it would be a marvelous thing for me to walk back home through the streets of Dhobi Talao and Kalba Devi. And when I came back home, I rang the bell. There was my father who opened the door, and he greeted me as a sort of a professor of an agricultural university in Pune who was called Professor Khan. And he said, Aiye Khan Sahib, and so on and so forth. And he sat down, he talked to me for a while. And I said, Daddy, but I am not Khan Sahib, it is me. And he was completely bewildered. I had taken him absolutely by surprise.
That's an image that comes in, a well-dressed up man, shining boots, going there, going into the library, picking up books, going to the market, picking up props and costumes for the play, coming back in the night. Sorry, he doesn't care about what he eats, what he doesn't eat. The only thing is tomorrow I have to be prepared for what I have planned. The first thing that one did when one got out of bed was, to straighten out the bed linen, to turn up the mosquito net so that everything was absolutely in a straight line, everything was tidy, that the slippers and so on were tightly in place. And each member of the family was made to be completely self-sufficient. And after performing the ablutions, of course, one had one's morning prayers. And that came about in one's own personal behavior from the idea of absolute cleanliness and tidiness. And that was a feature of the home.
Come on, buttocks! Ali, go and do that with your buttocks. Go on. Come on. Come on. No, do it with smaller steps. We are heroes. Get your come on. And get him down. Show yourself. And wait. Your whole profile, your bust, your hips, your buttocks, your leg, your arm, your this. Come on.
And you cannot cheat. You cannot cheat. You cannot hide. There's nothing you can do. And you're completely bare. And to that basic experience that I try to put across to our people. And I find it a very enlightening experience. I find it a very cleansing experience every single rehearsal. And that is why I don't get tired at rehearsal. It's something extraordinary about the creative experience, that it, even as it drains you, it rejuvenates you. She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. You want to back up now? Good. Back up.